Okay, you can begin.
Okay, good day once again. My name is Umnadi Ogenemaro. For dexterity's sake, please call me Maro. And today we'll be doing a brief recap of what went over yesterday, basically how the interface works. And yesterday we just did a brief overview. So we just touched a couple of aspects of the tool. So today we'll be looking at those aspects that we touched yesterday in more detail. And for those that missed the class yesterday, we'll just do a quick recap. So we talked about the building blocks of Power BI, where we talked about data sets, we talked about reports, we talked about visualizations, we talked about dashboards, and we talked about tiles. So basically, what are these? So a data set is any group of data that is used to work is called a data set. So Power BI, you refer to a data set as a group of your data. And a data set is usually made up of one or more data models. Now, a data model is simply the relationship between the data. So any kind of relationship between data is called a data model, including if the data stands alone. That is also still a data model. Now, a data set is the bedrock of everything you do in Power BI because your data is the foundation of everything. All inferences are made from your data. So you are, or your analysis, or your inferences, or your prescriptions and predictions can never be greater than your data, which is why you have to take caution with how you manipulate your data. Now, after that, we talked about data sets. Then we have visualization. Visualization basically is a graphical representation of data. So any form of graphical representation of data is called a visualization. Take note, any form, including tables, are called visualizations. So we also have reports. So a collection of these reports on one or more pages is called a report. Collection of visualizations on one or more pages is called a report. Now, this report can not be shared outside the platform usually, emphasis on usually, which is where comes a dashboard. So a dashboard basically is just a summary of your report. So by that, we mean a dashboard is a collection of visualizations on a single page that can be shared. So you can share the link to your dashboard directly from Power BI. So now we know what those five are, or do I have to go over them again? So next, we looked at getting data. So by getting data, I mean bringing the data that you want to work with into Power BI. Remember why I said data is the basis or the bedrock of everything you're doing. And data is any form of information that is being stored. So wherever it is stored, it is going to be brought into Power BI and loaded into a data set. Now, to bring in your data, you simply come to the top ribbons. So now let's look at the ribbon and what they do. So now up here, we have 5 different ribbons. We have the file ribbon, which brings up this. We have the home ribbon, which gives us this. We have inserts. We have modeling. We have view, and we have help. So for those of us that are used to Microsoft packages, this is the usual thing. Now, this is where things get really, really nice. So as usual, I have copy paste and all of that here. Now we have get data. What this get data simply does is helps us connect to data. So everything here under this data segment of the home ribbon is concerned with getting in data. So you could also create your own table manually. So for those of us that are used to Excel, where we could create tables manually, you could also do that here within Power BI. So let me cancel this, manually input values. Now, under the queries, under queries, in Power BI, when you hear the term queries, it usually refers to your data. So applied steps or things that you do to your data. It actually means actions carried out on your data. When you hear queries, it simply means actions carried out on your data. Or in some cases, the data itself is recognized as a query, but generally it is to refer to actions carried out on your data. Now, what the transform data does, it takes us to the Power Query Editor, which is where the data cleaning, or as it is called, the data engineering process, it takes place, where you can transform your data. Now, under the inserts, for the insert, it simply gives us uh, ways to insert more stuff here, but a wider range of this can be found under this column, under this ribbon, insert. So you could insert a new page. So what kind of page? Are you duplicating the page that you're currently working on? So in cases where you want to build those same kind of visuals, but with a different, so now I have new visual. So by default, it's just select a visual and bring in, and I can change that. Now let me remove this. Let's keep this page as clean as possible, and you can get in more visuals from other sources, or you can import. So now Power BI has inbuilt functionalities of question and answer, where you can ask your dataset questions in natural language. So you can insert that, key influencers and decomposition trees. So these are visualizations that take hold of artificial intelligence functionalities and can get out some of this from your visual. So now from Power Apps, so Power Apps is uh, another Microsoft product that can be integrated together with Power BI, where you can build an application that allows you to probably enter your data or one form.
Are you sharing your screen? I can't see
Yes,
your
I
screen. Are
am.
you sharing a screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I can't
Please,
see
is there
your
any other
screen.
person that can see my screen? So I'll reshare it again then. Okay, so what part did you not get, so I can come again?
I'm only seeing photos of participants on. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I just stopped sharing, so I'm about to share again. So can you see my screen now? Hi, Tokwe. Hi, Tokwe.
I can only see like.
Can you see my screen now?
Okay, I can see your screen now.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, yes, I
So
can
do I need
see.
to come over from the top?
Go
So
ahead.
I
I can
said
see your screen. Go ahead.
each ribbon is divided into segments. Each ribbon is divided into segments. The home ribbon, for instance, is divided into clipboard, data, queries, insert, calculations, and share. Now, clipboard is basically where you can do your copy and pasting. Your data has to do with getting in your data either from specific sources, which are the most popular sources are Excel, other Power BI data sets, SQL servers, or probably you want to just conjure up some data that you want to manually add in. Then also we have the transform data where or the queries. So I said queries usually refers to actions carried out on your data. Uh, and under the query star segment of this ribbon, we have transform data and refresh. So what transform data does, it takes you to Power Query Editor. Now, the Power Query Editor is where your data engineering or data cleaning processes are carried out. Now, in the Power Query Editor, what simply happens there is that you could manipulate your data without affecting the model directly until you apply, and those manipulations are recorded. So even if after carrying out those manipulations, you could go there and make changes, which is why I would advise all manipulations to data should be made from within the Power Query Editor. A couple of those manipulations can also be gotten outside here in the Power BI desktop. Now, the refresh simply refreshes your data set. So when you click this button, it refreshes your data set. So for new visual, it brings up a new visual to this space where you have the report pin. More visuals, get visuals that are not default to Power BI from outside sources like apps. So probably you have a Power App allows you to build applications, mobile applications. So now, either if you have that, you could add visuals from there or from files within your data. So under the calculations, you have new measure and quick measure. In we'll talk about this towards by next week. So then share allows us to share to the Power BI service. So please, is there anyone here that doesn't know about the Power BI service? So I believe we all know about Power BI service. So now we have the insert ribbon. Now this ribbon, on the other hand, just simply has to do with getting things in. So you can create new page or duplicated page from this new visual or getting more visuals. So I've explained this. Now this is one of the exciting parts. You have AI visuals. So AI visuals are visuals that use artificial intelligence. So usually companies spend a lot of time and money to get to know the key influencers for their businesses. So, but from the data that you feed to Power BI and you plot a key influencer, the tool Power BI automatically uses artificial intelligence to get out the key influencers. Same thing happens with a decomposition tree. So key influencers has to do with what exactly affects your business the most and how it affects your business. So as it sounds, key influencers, things that influence your business to either take an increase or a decrease. So the decomposition tree has to do with sub values or subcategories of a certain value. So how do they build together to create a particular value? So that is also another AI functionality. Now, Power Platform has to do with Power Apps. So as I explained earlier, Power Apps is an entirely different Microsoft product that allows us to build mobile applications, and those mobile applications can be used for things like selecting or data entry. So you could have build a Power App for data entry, and it inputs directly into your Power BI reports, giving you live feedbacks and all of that. So you could insert a text box, insert different kinds of buttons, different shapes, and images. So now under the modeling, tab, so remember earlier when I said that a data model is simply the relationship between our data. So how does our data relate to each other is what our data model talks about. So remember that. So now the modeling, what it does is really simple. It helps to manage these relationships and build off or build on those relationships. So what the modeling tab has to do with, I'll explain quickly. So under the relationships here, you can see manage relationships. It might be faint because we do not have data within the Power BI yet, but we'll be seeing that more often. Under manage relationships, it helps us to look at how our data is related. Now we have a couple of types of relationships. We'll be going over this in detail in later parts of the class. We have one to many, we have many to one, and we have many to many kinds of relationships. So now under calculations, from the data that you already have, you could create a new measure. So a measure in Power BI is a calculation of your data that is not stored within the data, but it is stored within the data model. So I'll come again. A measure in Power BI, so we can take note of the difference between a measure and a column. So a measure in Power BI is a calculation that is not stored in your data. Sorry, I made a mistake first time. It is not stored in your data model, but it is within your data set. So a measure is not within your data model because a measure is usually made out of your data. So it is not counted, or it is not counted for within your data model, but it is existent in your data. On the other hand, a new column exists in both your data model and your data set. So that's for the calculations segment of the modeling ribbon. Now we have page refresh. So what this simply does is, so sometimes when you refresh your data, the relationship between your data might change. So now that is just the job of this particular function, page refresh, right here. Please, if you need me to come back, please, and please do say something. And if you don't get anything at any point, please do say something. So the change detection simply looks at your data when you load in another data to get out the new changes in relationships or the new changes in measures and all of that. That's all your calculations that you have done within Power BI. So basically, this what if has to do with new parameters. So these parameters looks at you using DAX and slicers to your reports. So it looks at how it's one parameter affects your data. So we have the Q&A. So this end of the modeling tab is just simply to set up your Q&A, which I said is an AI functionality that allows you to ask questions to your data in natural language. So by natural language, we mean English and Spanish, which is the other option that is supported in Power BI, as we can see, English and Spanish. Now let's go ahead to the view. So view simply has to do with themes and how it fits to width. So that has to do with this page, fit to page, actual size. Now, remember in the beginning we said Power BI also has mobile apps for Windows, iOS, and Android. So sometimes when you're working on your phone, you might want to see how your report fits on your phone. So this is where you get to do it and work. So now you have filters, bookmarks. So this is just to add all these pins. Decide whether to remove these pins. So you can see the filter pin disappears when I do this. So I could have a live performance analyzer to look at the time taken by each visual, and all of that can also be gotten within our Power BI desktop. So this is basically what the interface looks like and feels like. Now in that file, we have open reports, save as, but I won't advise us to be using save as quite often because it can mess around with our data, PBIT or PBIX. So close this, get data, import, export, options and settings. So basically, this is it. And now we'll be looking at getting data. So basically, to get data in here, Power BI gives us multiple. Okay, before that, any questions, please? Tope and Mr. Philip. Hi.
Yeah, no question for now.
Hi. Any questions,
Hi.
please? Yeah,
No.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Philip.
Okay, thank you so much. I heard you said that. Yeah, you made mention that we should not use save as often. So what else can we use in place of save as? Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can hear you. So I said that when you click on save the first time, it does the same thing as save as. But in a case where you use save as more than once on a particular file, as we know with most Microsoft products, what ends up happening is that your your data gets duplicated. So imagine having so many PBIX files with different names already saved on your system. Do you understand why I said? Now you understand why I said it's just better to use the save. So if you use save the first time,
Yes, thank
it
you.
just does the same thing as save as.
Okay.
Hello? So do you get that?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay, so any other question? Because we're about to move to getting in data and how to connect to data.
Okay, I'm okay for now. You can proceed if there's no any question from software. I know we'll be getting along as the presentation continues.
Okay, so now let's get back to the Power BI desktop. Now, getting data, you do that by clicking either the exact data that you want to get, the data type you want to get, if it's already within this, or you click on get data. So not the drop down. So what when you click on the drop down, it just brings out the common data sources. So the most common data sources is what to bring out here. But if you click on the get data itself, which is the cylinder with a table, it brings up the list of data sources. So now the list of data sources is practically endless. Emphasis on practically, because there are a lot of these that are not commonly used. Well, the list of data sources are so many. Okay. Now here we have the list. So now for me, the three most common sources I have worked with since I started working with the tool are CSV, Excel, and web. So those three data sources simply get them from different places. One, the CSV collects CSV files. So as we know, CSV files are comma separated values, while the Excel connects to Excel workbooks and tables and sheets, whilst the web is simply web scraping. So Power BI allows us to do basic web scraping by a few clicks and pastes, a few control C's and control V's, and you can scrape an entire website. Whilst complex scraping can be done by just adding probably a few dark functionalities. So, which is going to be one of the biggest tricks I'll teach us before the end of this session, scraping websites with multiple pages. So, believe you me, it's not a trick you get for free normally, or here you are in a session and you get it. Okay, now let's look at getting files. So now we have Excel. I believe we all have the uh, practice Excel workbook. I'm going to upload another workbook after this class called Working with Single Tables. So we all have the practice Excel workbook, I believe.
I don't have.
Can I get feedback, please?
Was it
Talk
shared?
by.
Okay, yeah, I want to ask,
So I
that
dropped the link.
Excel workbook, was it shared to the participants?
Yes, I dropped the
Just drop
Dennis.
a link
Sorry,
because
Desmond.
I've not seen it. Was it on the WhatsApp?
Yes. Desmond, please could you help out with that link again? So connect to Excel. When you choose, so now let's watch. When you choose the file type that you want to use to work, or when you choose where you want to get your data from, be it a server or a PDF or one place or the other, or a database, you simply click on that and click connect. When you click on connect, you just get it and open. So now take note, what happens is that an instance of that data is compressed and loaded into Power BI. An instance of that data is compressed and loaded into Power BI. So when that instance of that data is compressed and loaded into Power BI, it is kept within a data model. So which is why sometimes Power BI can be more um, sleek and useful for working on larger data than Excel. So Excel also has a limit to the amount of rows that it can work on. I think I can't really place my head around the actual number, but it doesn't. I don't think it should process more than a million rows. But Power BI works well with longer rows and less columns. So there we have it. So we would now select the data we want to work with. Now remember in Excel, this that we see here is usually the first row. Let's look at this so we can go through and have a preview of the data we want to bring in just to be sure of the data that we're going to be loading into Power BI. So I'll just select sheet 2 through sheet 6. Now you have two options. Either you click on load or you click on transform data. When you click on load, what happens is that it just brings the data in and creates a data model out of that data without manipulating the data or any form of work on the data. But when you click on transform data, it takes you straight to the Power Query editor. So please, Mr. Philip, can you remind me what exactly is the Power Query editor? Hi, Mr. Philip. What exactly is the Power Query editor, please?
Power co-editor.
Hi, Mr. Yes, I can.
Hello?
I said yes, I
I
can.
think you can use that to edit your. Okay, you can use that to edit your sheet.
So edit my what?
To edit your sheet or
Okay.
the data on your worksheet.
Okay. So Tokpe, please, what is the Power Query Editor?
I think the Power Query Editor, that's where um, where you make any adjustments you need to do on your data sets before you do your analysis.
Okay, so we're both right. So it's where we can edit our sheets, and but the thing is, in data analysis, it goes beyond just editing the sheet. And most times, it is even advised that you don't even edit the sheet. Here, data manipulation and data editing are two different concepts. So we'll be looking at that today. Data editing and data manipulation are two different concepts. So data editing has to do with what I'll show us in a moment. So let me load this in rather than clicking on transform data. I'll load it in first so we can see something. So please take note of this process. And I hope we're all working together. As I'm doing mine, I expect that you are doing yours also. This is a hands-on session. So I prefer to teach with a hands-on session so I can get the questions in real time. So we can see it loaded the data to model before it started getting the data, and you can see how it's loading in the data. It has already loaded the data to model. Now it is detecting the relationship between the sheets. So remember, our data model simply has to do relationships. After that, you can see it has loaded our data in. So do we understand that process,
So
or do I have to
I
go
want to
over what
understand
happened?
something. So, yeah, excuse me. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. This data you just loaded in now, you already had it on your system, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, because when you clicked on Excel, okay, is it just going to go straight to that particular data? What if you have several data sets and all of that on your?
Then you go for the one that you want to work with.
Okay.
Do you understand me? So if you noticed, I had two uh uh two different Excel sheets stored in that particular folder.
Yeah.
I had two different Excel sheets stored in that particular folder, but I chose just one. So it's the same thing. So if that wasn't what I was going to look for, and probably what I was going to look for was in my downloads folder, I'll go to my downloads folder and look for the data I need to work with. It's just the same thing as opening an Excel sheet with Excel. So probably you use are you familiar with Excel, sir?
Yes.
So probably you use your file. When you click on file, you go to get your Excel sheets, right? Do you understand?
Yeah.
And you want to open an existing Excel sheet, it's the same thing that still happens. You have to go and look for the existing Excel sheet from where it is and open it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the same thing
Okay.
that happens here.
Oh, sorry. I thought Mr. Desmond was sharing the link to get the data, but I think it's the link to download Power BI he sent.
Okay, then. So while we're still working, so I'll go to the group and get that for you. So as we were saying, so that's how to get your data in. But now I talked about difference between data editing and data manipulation. So I clicked on transform data to take me to the Power Query editor. Now this is the Power Query editor. So the link to where the resources are has been dropped in the group chats for you, Mr. Philip.
Okay, thank you.
Have you seen it? Okay, so now data editing means I manually come here and change probably the values here, which actually this will not let me do. Power BI won't let me do that. Can you see? It's not letting me edit the data on like Excel. Do you understand me? Hi, Mr. Philip, I'm answering your question.
Yes, yes.
So can you see that
Yes.
it's not letting me edit
Why is it so?
because you are not supposed to be editing your data. You manipulate your data.
Okay.
It is it
Okay.
as a data analyst, you are not editing that data. You are working with the data that was given to you.
Okay.
Do you understand me? So if you can edit your data, that means your data is no longer the bedrock. So remember when I said whatever you do, your analysis, your visualizations, your inference, your predictions can never be greater than your data. Do you understand?
Yes, yes. Yes, I can hear
That
you.
this is why it can never be greater than your data, and it is why data still sh- stands as the supreme entity of this in this or in this field. Your data is the supreme entity because all inferences, all observations, all predictions are based off your data. And since your data has been gathered from the field or it has been gathered from wherever it was gathered from, your data gathering process should be correct. So that's why you see that people that do data entry with Excel, people that do this is also why Excel can be a very dicey tool to use for data analysis. What happens if in the process of working someone accidentally edits the data? So that means at that point your data analysis is automatically incorrect.
Okay.
Do you understand me?
Yes.
Now this is data manipulation. I'll show you now what data manipulation is. So I'll look for a row that has a lot of nulls. Okay, occupation, for example. Let's say I do a group by occupation. So rather than getting new column name as count, I'll do all rows. So probably new column name, let's say jobs. I click on okay. Can you see that here? Then I can expand this. Now, what I just did basically is data manipulation. So I can remove this occupation in this case and click on OK. It expands it. Now, this is data manipulation, not data editing. So if it were to be data editing, so to do this in Excel, you understand the rigorous process you go through to do this same thing in Excel, right? So now this is data manipulation, not data editing. So you can manipulate your data, but you do not edit your data. I hope that's clear now.
Yes, yes.
So
That is clear.
I'll undo those. So I'll go over the Power Query editor the same way I went over the Power BI desktop. So the Power Query editor too has a couple of ribbons and it has more buttons and more functions because This is where the real dirty work goes on, the data engineering. This is where your data is made to look the way it looks. It doesn't change what your data is, it only changes how your data looks. And because of that, you can draw deeper insights, or you can make more concise predictions. And you could also make your data faster and smarter. So we have data types. So before I start talking about that, let's talk about data types in Power BI. Power BI basically has three data types: two primary data types and one secondary data type. For the two primary data types, they are numeric and non-numeric, while the secondary data type has to do with date time. Now, let's see. Okay, this has to do with date time. Now, if we look up here under data type, so the look for the transform section of the home ribbon, you would see data type, and now you have date time. So I'll click the drop down so we can see the different data types. So on the upper end, we have the numeric data types, which are decimal number, fixed decimal number, whole number, and percentage. Whilst on the date time, which is the secondary data type, we have date time, date, time, date time and time zone, then duration. Now these are for your secondary data type, date time. Now for the next primary data type, which has to do with non-numeric, we have text, true or false, and binary. And kindly note here, when we refer to binary, we're not just referring to your data having 0 or 1. Remember, 0 is an non-existent number in the binary table. I really need us to understand this fact clearly. When you say 0 in Power BI, it is recognized as null. So this is another thing I need us to understand. Power BI understands the number 0. When you say 0, that means that place is empty. Now recognize that 0 is a character. Do we understand that? 0 is a character. 0 is not an empty space. So when you put 0, that means there is a value there. So Power BI also recognizes that the same way. If you want a place to be empty, it has to have null. Now, binary values are things like 0, 1. 0, 1, 0. Those are recognized as binary values. But when you put in 0, it creates an error. A very practical example of that is if we change the data type. So let's look for somewhere that has just 0 and 1 under it. So, okay, for example, homeowner flag. So if I change the data type of this from whole number to binary, it will flag an error immediately. So I'll add new steps so that we'll be able to undo that. Flags an error immediately, as we can see, red error. So now when you have errors in your table like this, it is more often than not due to the fact that that place has a wrong data type. About 90% of the time in Power BI, when there's an error in your table, it is due to having a wrong data type. So you should look at the error, either decide if you can do away with the rows that have those errors, or you can replace those errors. Now, when I undo this and still a whole number, we can see. Now, I need us to take note that even numbers, also numbers themselves, like numbers can also be text. But text cannot be numbers. So for those of us that have done Excel before, we should understand that text has to do with characters. Any character is text. Any character can be text, including space. But only numbers within 0 to 9, characters 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 can be recognized as numbers. I hope you understand that. Do we understand that? So that we could talk about the ribbon.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now let's look at the ribbon. So the home ribbon, under the new query ribbon, we'll have new source, which does the same thing as get data, recent sources, enter data. So this is practically the same thing as the data source in the Power BI desktop interface. So data source settings allows us to change the permissions. Now manage parameters helps us look at the parameters in the file. So this button, more often than not, helps us either create a parameter or use check out the existing parameters. So we'll talk about that when we look at this. Refresh preview simply has to do with refreshing this interface. Now, usually this preview is usually the first 100 columns. Sorry, first 999 rows rather. So the it loads as you go so that it doesn't create. Remember that it's a compressed version of your data file that is here. So as you go, it just keeps loading. So when you do an analysis, as you can see here, the column profile that you see here up here, by column profile, we'll understand what the column profile is pretty soon. By column profile is based on the first 1000 rows. So when you scroll, it keeps adding to those 1000 rows. So it's more like data windowing, which is another concept. Data windowing. So what data windowing is simply loading in a certain portion of that data into memory so as not to overload the processing of your data. So it loads a certain portion of that data into memory and uses that portion of the data to create the model or to work on the data. So when you move more, the portion of data, so it's just like you standing outside the window. So when you shift your position, the angle from which you see things on the other side of the window changes, right? Hi.
Yeah,
So if you're standing
yeah.
outside the window, the amount of things you can see from that window are limited, right?
Yes, yes,
So if you want to see more things on the left of your window, you go closer and look towards the left. The same
yes.
thing is applicable to the right. That's the same thing that applies to data windowing. So for now, when I come to number one, the column profile is based on the top 1000. So it's 1 to 1000 that calculates this. But when I scroll to something like past 1000, it is from this 1276 to 2276 that is used as a new column profile. I hope you understand that. So the more I scroll,
Hey, can you please come again?
so the column profile, okay, I think I need us to understand what a column profile is. Probably that's why we're finding this hard. So under the views ribbon, so under the views ribbon, we have column profile, column distribution, column quality, and monospaced. So if you notice under the top of this where I selected, you can see a thin blue line, right?
Yeah,
And you see that when I hover over it, it brings out basic information about it. Valid um, rows, the number of rows with errors, and the percentages. So you can see that the value rows is 1000. So it takes into account just 1000 rows at a time. Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
okay.
Your column profile takes into cognizance 1,000 rows at a time. So basically, this view, this view ribbon, basically helps us to have a feel of our data set even before we touch our data to start working. Do you understand me?
Okay.
So what this simply does, I'll show us how to use it now. So if I click on column profile, it brings out everything related to this column for me. So the counts, which is the number. So we can, as I said earlier, column profiling is based on 1,000 rows. It's something we have to take into cognizance all the time. It brings out the number of errors, the numbers of empty, numbers of distinct values, number of unique values. So distinct values is different from unique values. In that, distinct values has to do with values that once it occurs, it is shown that it is counted as one. So whether there's a repetition or not, it's still counted as one. So here we have 0 and 1. So 0 is a distinct value, 1 is a distinct value, but neither of them are unique values. Neither of them are unique values because they occur multiple times. I hope you understand that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we we also calculated the number of zeros, then the not a number, none. None, not a number.
Okay.
None stands for
That's
not.
that's like maybe like that's like maybe like letters or stuff
Uh,
or symbols.
Not really. In cases where you have empty spaces, so let me do one for you to see. So replace values. So now this is going to work across the column. So if I replace values, value to find, let's say 0, and I replace it with none. Okay. So, and I take the column profile of this. Can you see that it still has them as valid? Do you understand me?
Yeah.
It still has it as valid. But now it has 273 none and 273 unique. Do you understand? And it has 274 distinct because those none are recognized as distinct values, each of them. Do you understand me?
Okay. So why do we now have 274 and 273?
Look at this. Unique values are 273. That includes none, not a number.
Uh,
Do you understand? You have 273 instances of them being not a number. I remember one occurs multiple times. The number one occurs multiple times, so it is not unique.
okay. Okay.
Now, do you understand me?
Yeah.
So let me quickly undo that. Undo the replace values and reopen the column profile. Now I can look at the average, standard deviation, the even numbers, and the odd numbers. So do you understand? Do we understand this? How column profiling helps? Do we understand this? So now, to add to that, we have column distribution. Now, column distribution simply brings out the distinct and the unique values. So the column profile is more like the complete package of both column quality and both column quality. So we can see a column quality, which is what happens when we hover over this line. We can see the column quality and the column distribution. So that is the combination we have here. So now, most times we can look at the column profile for each of these columns to get a feel of how our data exactly is without even having to do much or writing any code at all. So to do this in Python, I might have to write like Okay, so let's see df.core. Uh, I'm gonna have to write like 5, 6 lines of code. That is if I don't want to get out things that are really complex. Dot dev, yeah, dot info. So like 5 to 6 lines of code to get out this column profile. But just by simply coming here and clicking this, I have my complete column profile. So Power BI is really an easy tool to use. Do we understand this so far? So do we understand this so far so that we can move?
Yes, yes.
Yes, let's proceed. Let's proceed.
Tokpe,
Yes, yes. We
Mr.
can
Philip,
proceed.
Yeah,
Mr.
let's
Philip.
proceed.
Okay.
Yes, let's proceed, please.
Now we're talking about the functions of the buttons on the ribbon. So we stopped at a query. So we can look at the properties of the table or the sheet in question, and we can give it a description. We can change the name of the table and give the table a table description. So that's why I said the Power Query Editor is uh, one of the features that is mostly used by data engineers. So this helps us in cases where the next person that is going, you're going to hand over the data to, so that the person can understand what the data is about. You can put a table description and describe each column in the table and all of that. Do you understand me?
Okay, sorry, please. Where did you click to get the query properties?
So under the query section of the home ribbon.
Okay,
So have you found that?
properties.
So in the
Okay,
power, so in the Power Query Editor, when you say queries, it refers to your data.
okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So now when you click on properties, it simply allows you to change the name, give it a description. So this is just to make the process easier for the next person that's going to pick up that data.
okay,
So remember here, you are doing data engineering mostly. Then you manage the data, delete, you can delete, duplicate, or reference entire table and all of that. So these are simply query functionalities. Now you could choose your columns. So let's see, look at this. You could choose the columns that you want to appear or you want to select. So in cases where you want to, in cases whereby you want to select multiple columns at once, imagine you having to select all the columns, and you probably just want to remove 1 or 2 columns. So you could just come up here and use the choose columns, or you can use the shortcut Control A. Your normal Windows, take notes, your normal Windows shortcuts still work here. So that was Control A, and then I can hold down Control and select multiple columns. But why go through that much stress when you could just come here and choose columns directly? So let's unselect this, or when you select this, remove months so that we can see this live. So can you see that we can't find those remaining columns? The columns that were not selected, they got removed automatically. So we didn't have to stress. Let me undo that. And now we can see the number of months coming back up, fiscal months number and all of that. So really easy to use. So you can use remove columns. So what remove columns does is it removes the selected column. So as you can see, we selected quarter. So when I click on remove columns, quarter disappears. And we could also remove other columns. That it will just keep only the column that is selected. So now, do we understand the difference between using remove other columns and choosing of columns? Do we understand the difference?
Yeah, I think they remove column. We have to click on the column, then click on remove column. But the choosing of column, I would
Okay.
like you to share more light on the choosing of column.
Okay. So I said when you use choose columns, so it is only the columns that are selected, the columns that are being ticked, that remain. So when you use choose columns, it's like you are selecting all the columns. So if you have, let's say, over 100 columns, I'm just giving instances of where we have really large data. Do you understand me? You can't be searching manually for the column you want to remove. Do you understand? Hi.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you.
So to ease up the process, you simply click on choose
Okay.
columns. So let's say the
So
column I
once
want
you
to
click
remove
on
is probably weekday.
it,
So I can go, so
yeah.
probably
Okay.
it brings out the list of the columns. And remember,
Okay.
since all of them are existing in the data, as you
Okay.
can see, it says choose the columns to keep.
Okay.
So it's the columns that are selected that will remain.
Okay.
The other columns
Oh,
that are not selected get dropped.
get dropped.
Do you
Okay.
understand
By
me?
automatically.
So that makes your job easier.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. 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 So
Please come
it
again.
makes. I said it drops automatically.
Yes. So
Yes,
you just
which makes
select the column
it hard to
that you
use
want to
this
drop.
uh, remove column.
So you rather use this. But
Yeah.
the thing is, well, it works also that way, but it's just preferable to use it when you are having really large data. But for cases where you have small data, you could just simply come right click and remove that particular column that you want.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in cases where you have to select multiple columns, I will always advise that you should use choose columns.
Choose columns. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll talk about rows. So remember your columns, these are your columns: month, year long, month, year number, weekday, number, weekday, and so on and so forth. These are your these are your columns, and one down through 4,000 are your rows. So basically, we have keep rows and remove rows. Now, these keep rows allows you to keep the top rows, keep the bottom rows, keep range of rows. So you specify the number of rows you want to keep. So now let's look at them. So keep top rows. So you select the number of rows from the top you want to keep. So let's say one just want to keep 50. So you can see 16 columns and 50 rows. Can we see that at the bottom left of my screen?
Yes. 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 You can say it.
So I'll undo this. So we should remember that on the applied steps always takes note of the process that we go through. It records the steps that we take. So you can undo them by clicking the red X here. So is that understood? Is that understood?
Yes. Yes.
And we could also access the properties here. So the properties, same way we access properties from there, we could access properties from here also.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that is for. So now let's look at. So keep bottom rows, just instead of keeping the top, keep the bottom. Now keep a range of rows. Now you select a particular row that you want to be the first row. So let's say the first row I want to keep is 10. So what is the number of rows I want to keep? So let's say I just want to keep 50 rows again. So now we can see it just takes 50 rows from that place and keeps those rows. So I'll undo that. Now, as it sounds, keep duplicates. So it's keep duplicates help us to keep the ones that have multiple values. We won't see that because almost every single uh, table here has multiple values. So let me use that in another sheet that would have something like that. So okay, so we have. I'll select country. Okay, where will it be? Right, yeah, country. So I'll select country. Okay, no, let me select group. Then I will say keep duplicate. And if you notice, Pacific is no longer there. NA, which is not available, which is would make that thing to also read as text, would also not be kept because they are not duplicates. So as I undo that, you can see Pacific is not a duplicate. NA is not a duplicate either. So whenever I say keep duplicates, so now I want to show us something that a couple of us might not take note of. So keep rows, keep duplicates. And that action was still carried out on the entire column, although it was just a particular row that was selected on that column. Because actions in Power BI are carried out on a column-based processing. So 90% about most of the processes you'll be doing in Power BI are carried out on a column-based processing. Do we understand that?
Okay.
I do we understand that?
So it's more of column based than row, right?
Yes, more of column. You can also work on your rows, but with particular things like when you are merging and appending. So we'll look at merging and appending. So we'll be looking at merging and appending next after this. So now let me undo the keeping of duplicates. So now let's look at keeping of errors. So now take note that this is a whole number. So that is for keeping of rows. So I want to show us keeping of errors. So let's see, where can I get? So basically what keeping of errors does is when you have an error, it just keeps the errors and deletes the rest. So removing of rows. Now this one works a little differently from the other where we're keeping rows in that now when you don't have uh, remove a range of rows, what you have is remove alternate rows. So what happens when you are having to remove alternate rows? So now it just takes an average value of the number of rows you want to keep and the number of rows you want to remove, and removes finds the pattern across the data and removes those that don't fit into that pattern. So do we understand? I have to go over that again. Okay, so let me give us a practical example.
Please go
So have you been
over
able
it
to get
again,
this
please.
data? So that I hope. Have you been able to get this data so I know that we're working at the same pace?
No, we have not. We have not.
Hi. So
Hello,
our advice
Mara.
immediately after the class that we should do that.
Mara.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry.
Yes, madam.
Sorry for breaking in. I need to know if Tokwe is following. Mr. Tokwe, are you there? Okay. I do not have the data set to practice it. Okay, I just shared you the link to where you're going to get data sets from. Please scroll up on this chat session. You'll find it there. Thank you. Mara, please. I heard
That's
when Mr.
surprising.
Philip said you needed to go over something, but you heard that, so I wanted to just inform you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, Mr. Tokwe, I asked that if there is anything you can unmute your mic and talk to me to come over it again, please. So, and I remember dropping the data, the link to the data. So I would expect that by the next class, we all should be able to do this. Because in the next class, we'll be looking at merging and appending. That's if we will not be able to finish it in this class. So now we'll look at this. So we're talking about removing alternate rows, and I said it's a little bit different from where we were keeping range of rows. So removing alternate rows does this. So you choose the first row to remove. So in this case, let's say I want to remove row 1. Number of rows to remove. I say I want to keep remove. So this sheet is a little small, so we'll have to I want to remove 2 rows, and number of rows I want to keep 3 rows. Now, this does not balance the total number of rows in the data, just so we can see that. So we can see that it removes row 1. So it just looks for a random pattern across. So we have 3, 4, 5, no 6, no 7, we have 8, 9, 10. So it removed 11, it removed 1 and 2. So it's supposed to, what you say, first row I want to remove. So first row I want to remove is, let's say, 2. The number of rows I want to remove, okay, let's say 3. Number of rows I want to keep, yeah, 8 plus 3 sums up 11. So I now have 8 rows comfortably, and now we can see that there will be 1 is kept, 2 was removed, 3 and 4 were removed. So if you have a larger data, we would see that the way it skips. So as you can see, and skip, then start at a specific row, then the number of rows to take at once. So do we understand that? Do we understand that? Or I should do it over again with a larger data so we can see that more clearly. Hi, Mr. Tope. So now, okay, take note in customer key, just take note of the arrangement. So I'll say remove alternate rows. First row to remove, row 2. Number of rows to remove, 40. Number of rows to keep, 12. And this data has more than that. But when you click OK, so we can see that it kept more than 40.
Okay, I wanted to ask why do we have to remove rows or keep rows?
So what? So in cases where there are some particular rows that are messy, so
Okay.
those particular rows do not fall into your data, and
Okay.
sometimes it causes what we call a bias. Do you understand me? So it
Okay.
makes your data less accurate. So you have to remove those rows.
Okay. Which means you have to
So let's
identify.
say, for example, rows that, yes,
Okay.
or alternatively, you can replace them with values that will make them to have error. Do you
Okay.
understand me?
Okay.
So, for example, this is another hack in data analysis with Power BI. So for me personally, this I'm talking out of personal experience here. When I'm
Okay.
doing an analysis and I see there is a particular value that doesn't fit in. So, for example, I have a value like 10 billion in a data that has values like
Okay.
that range from 1 to 100. So that is clearly an error. Do you understand me?
Oh yeah.
So I now do replace values and I replace it with probably the letter A, and I remove rows that have errors. Or I noticed that a certain part of the data, let's say from number 10 down through to number 20, have a certain kind of error. So can you remember our first row to remove was number 2, and we said it should remove 40. So you can see that it's removed from number 2 down. So if you look at this, this is 11000, and it's supposed to have 11 down to, it's removed 001 down to 040. Can you see that in our data under customer key? Can we see that? So that's the same thing that happens when you say remove alternate rows. So do we understand that now?
All right. All right.
So when we're saying remove alternate rows, is doing directly the opposite of keep range of rows. Do we understand that now?
Oh yes.
So let me undo that so that we can see it again. So I'll remove, I undo. So we can see that 001 through to 040 are back. So do we understand?
Yes. Yes.
Do we understand that now? Mr. Philip,
Yes. 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 I'm with you. I'm getting along.
Mr. Tope, Mr. Tope, please. Hello, Mr. Tope.
Mara, please proceed. I'm going to reach out to him
Okay,
from here. Okay.
okay. So we have gone through keeping and removing of rows. Now let's look at sorting. Now sometimes your data, you might need to sort your data in a specific order, probably from A to Z or from Z to A. And sometimes when you have numeric data, you might need to sort it either in ascending or descending order. So by that we mean lowest to highest or highest to lowest. So now let's do lowest to highest, so that I can just show us that it also works on numeric data. So A to Z means lowest to highest, Z to A means highest to lowest. So we sort out our columns that way. So is that understood? Sorting. Now let's look at splitting of column and grouping by. Okay. Now splitting of a column simply has to do with okay, let me look for one that has that. Okay, let's use education for example. the education column as an example, and we split column. So now you can split by delimiter, split by number of characters, split by position, lowercase to uppercase, uppercase, lowercase, digits to non-digits, non-digits, digits. So you can use things like digit to non-digit in cases like I was looking for a particular key that we saw earlier that started with an S. It should either be under sales or product. Okay, that's product key, not. Okay, here it is. Sales order number. So if we use a split column, I will say by non-digits to digits. So we can see SO got separated from there. Some was split in sales order number 1 and sales order number 2. So that's how to use it. Split either by that or you split by delimiter. So by delimiter, you would have to choose the delimiter in question. So let's go back to our data where we had our customer data. So I could easily rename this sheet 3 to customer. Makes the data more easy to understand. So I can just do that under properties, or I could just double click here to change that. So under education, split by delimiter. Split column by delimiter. Now we'll have to choose the delimiter, be it a space or colon or whatever kind of delimiter. Now we want to use a space. So now we'll choose the leftmost or the rightmost or each occurrence of the delimiter. By that, when you say split at the leftmost delimiter, it means the space or the column that is to the left. So if you have a space before your high school, so it will split it into 2 different columns. But at each occurrence of the delimiter means no matter how many times. So those that don't have up to that number of times will be filled with null. So this is it. So we can see no, and it did not affect the data type. So that's it. So look at this, partial high school. So the rest, they have nulls. So sometimes in some analysis, this function is really helpful. Okay. So there we have it. And I've done a group by. So group by simply helps us to put them into groups. So you could either do the sum of all the rows, get the average value. These are mostly for numeric, the minimum value, maximum value, and you could also use them for text. For example, this is counts, so it takes in the count of rows or the count of the distinct rows, or it can bring up all the rows as I showed us earlier. And for the advanced, it just helps us to group it into different columns. So we can also do more than one at once. So that's just basically it for the advanced. So I'll cancel this because we've gone over group by earlier. So is there anyone that doesn't understand that? Split column or group by? Any question? Any question? Split column or group by? Mr. Philip.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to
Any
I'm
question?
always I always want to know why we the usage of split column or group by. Why do we have to split column, or why do we have to group by?
It actually depends on what you're working with. So let me give you a use case. So sometimes in things that are categorized, like college. So college degree or graduate degree. So most times, just imagine you collect in education data, education classifications, and you have different degrees. and probably you have college degree, bachelor's degree, um, doctorate degree, master's degree, and you want to split that into two different columns. And you also have something like secondary school leaving certificate, okay, which is virtually the same thing as a college degree. But basically, you have something that doesn't fall within that category. Do you understand me? You can use a split column to get those within your data that already have a degree. So you have a new column for those that have a degree. So those that have a degree would now be reading degree, and those that don't will now be reading probably null. So you can, so in cases where you want to drop certain values. So remember that sometimes when you want to, for people like HRs or companies that want to do employment, and probably they have a data analyst that want to work on the data of applicants that they've collected to reduce the number of applicants. So with this, you could automatically reduce the number of applicants for a job from over um, 10,000 to less than 8,000 just by using a split column and dropping the columns that don't fit in. So do you understand? That is just an example of a scenario. Do you understand me?
Very well. Thank you.
Now, on the other hand, if you don't want to use a split column, now let me give you the same scenario using a group by. Now, for the group by, you simply group by the education column and just puts them into different education groups, and you remove the row that has to do with, before you expand, you remove the row that has to do with, for example, college degree. If let's say your minimum is a bachelor's degree, you remove college degree, the row that has to do with college degree. So automatically you've removed a lot of people from the process. So do you understand me? Hello, Mr. Philip.
Oh yeah.
Hi, Mr. Philip. Okay,
Yes, I'm
so
following you. I'm following you.
if that's clear, we've talked about data types. Now let's look at
Following you.
this. So
Yes, I'm
remember,
following.
remember in Excel, your data always starts, including the header. So here, if you look at under applied steps, you can see promoted headers. It is a step that will automatically be taken in, hello?
Yes, I'm with you.
It's a step that will
I'm following.
automatically be taken in Power BI, promoted headers. So what that does, it uses the first row as headers. If you open this
Okay.
same sheet in Excel, the the row that you are seeing as the header right now that has education, occupation, and so on and so forth would be the
Yes.
first row.
Yes.
Now in Power BI,
Education,
that gets promoted to
arts,
become the
Wi-Fi,
header.
arts following.
Yes. In Power BI, that gets promoted to become the header. But what if it's a scenario where your first row, the original first row, that Excel will carry it as column one, column two, column three. Do you understand?
Hmm. Yes. Yes.
Since Excel carries it as column one, column two, column three, probably the person already used DAX to rename from column one, column two, column three to the actual name of those columns. When it gets imported and
Okay.
it automatically, Power BI now uses first row as header. That means you lose that
Okay.
column values, right? So the best way to regain
Yes.
that is to do this. Other than using first row as headers, which you do by default in, which happens by default, but in case it doesn't happen, you can manually use first row as headers. You have used headers as first row. So now look at that. So now you can see column one, column two, column three. So this is how it will appear in Excel. Do you understand me?
Okay. 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 Yes.
So let me undo this. So now we have that back. So now let's look at replace values. So I've gone over replace values before, but I didn't give concrete explanation. So replace values, what it simply does is that in the name sounds, you type in a value you want to find and type in what you want to replace it with. That's all. Do we understand that?
Okay, okay.
Hi, do we understand that?
Please, can yeah, can
And
you
type
show
in
that
what you
again,
want to
please?
replace it with.
Okay, okay,
Okay, so I'll pick a column. I'll go to a sheet that has a lot of null values. So we can see null values and we can see a lot of NAs on that color,
yeah,
right?
okay, yes,
So now I want to replace the values NA with none, not a number. Or no, in this case, because
okay,
not a number. So I'll replace it with null. So let's do that.
okay,
Replace values. So I'll replace NA with null.
okay. Wait, no, oh, okay, I got it. Is
So
just like find
can
and
you
replace, but in
wait,
MS Word.
wait? Yes, it's like find and replace in MS Word. But did you notice something? I did this on purpose. Did you? Can you tell me what you noticed?
Yeah, but we still have the NA. Then we have black,
So
we have silver.
can you tell me why? Can you tell me why?
I don't know why it's so.
Okay, so it's case
Explanation
sensitivity.
on that.
Case
Okay.
sensitivity. So remember when I did that, I just simply typed NA,
Yes.
small n, small a.
Okay.
So
Oh.
certain times, in not in all cases though, but certain times, Power BI might just help you out, but not all the time. Like now, it didn't. But certain times, the case sensitivity is not really as bad, especially in cases where you have things like NAN that are already inbuilt values in Power BI. Do you understand?
Okay.
But when you have things like text, you should be really careful to use the exact cases. Do you understand me?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So the next thing we're supposed to explain is merging and appending of queries. But that is a really broad thing to explain. So we'll take that in our next session. So before the
Okay.
next session, I would love us to practice. And
Okay.
within the week, within the week, a link will be sent on the group to 20 questions to be answered. 20 questions to be answered. It's a multiple choice question.
Okay.
Do you understand me? So within
Yes.
the week, we'll get that. And okay, so I'll just touch it on the surface, merging and appending of queries. So merging of queries simply means joining by rule. Do we understand that?
Joining by what?
So it's joining by rule, merging has to do with joining by rule. Merge this query with another query in this file. So it simply has to do with joining by rule. While appending of queries simply means joining by column.
Okay.
Merging of queries has to do with joining by row, and appending of queries has to do with joining by column. So we have 10 minutes to do a quick recap. So if there's anything since the beginning of the class that you want me to go over again, this is the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you
So
so
when you're
much.
done, you can easily close and apply or just close. In this case, I'll just be closing. I will not be applying
Okay.
the queries. So I
Okay.
close my Power Query editor and my Power BI desktop is back open.
Okay. Good. Okay. I wanted to ask if I am to attach a worksheet to Power
Okay.
BI. Okay. Can I
Okay.
get it? Can I can I attach an Excel directly from my system from my device? An
Yes.
Excel
That
worksheet.
Excel sheet is
Can I
on my
import it directly from my
yeah.
device? Okay.
Yes, it is on
Okay.
your device.
But is it supposed to have a specified format?
No, it's just an XLSX. So you have a lot of formats to import with. So we have different formats. So I'll just go over a few. I talked about XLXX, which is how Excel saves its files. Remember?
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Can you remember that? We have CSV. So Excel also opens CSV, but a CSV file is quite different. So let me import a CSV file so you can just see. So it's almost the same thing. So this is the CSV file. So if I do this and connect, so I won't be loading it in. I'll just cancel.
It says there.
So this is so cancel. So I don't have to load it in
Okay.
multiple times. So okay, and
Okay.
boom. Apparently we left out scraping data from the web. So now we have a whole lot of sources. So this one's XML, JSON. This is for those that do that want to get data from backends of websites and all of that. So if you're a programmer or
Okay.
developer and you have JSON formats that on your database
Okay.
and or you have downloaded them to your computer, you can get them in this format, import data. So sometimes you can have data scattered in a folder that is
Okay.
not stored in any particular format. So, have you ever experienced that kind of data ever before?
Okay.
So, it has links and all of that. So, you can import that folder. You can import PDFs, SharePoint,
Okay.
SQL servers, Access database. So, you have a long list. I really can't go over this list because most of them are things that a lot of people will never work with. But a couple of them
Yes.
would come in handy. and and now you have a blank query. So a blank query enables you to write your code to get. So in cases where, so now this one you would need a lot of help from the internet if you're going to be using a blank query. So you
Okay.
write your code
Wow.
in DAX and M from scratch. So in that case, if it's a data source that has never been tapped before, you can program
Mm.
manually to get data from that source. So there is no limit. So I always tell people the limit to what you can do with Power BI is your mind. As far as your mind can stretch.
Okay.
So it's just as far as your mind can stretch. So your levels of
Right.
creativity and all of that will be put to a test.
Okay. Okay.
So
Well.
I hope we'll learn a lot from today's class. If there, I'm still expecting one more question actually, because I promised something at the beginning of class that I've not done.
Yeah.
So I want to see if you guys have noticed.
Mario, can you hear
Huh?
me? Can you hear me? There is a
Yes, sir.
question. The question is, can
Yeah.
Power BI analyze text data?
Yes. So there are certain
Okay, can
visuals.
you explain?
So there are certain. Remember, Power BI is first a data visualization tool. So the most powerful form of analysis is what your eyes can see. So do we all agree? The most powerful form of analysis is what your eyes can see. So Power BI does has a couple of visuals for text. Example, cloud text clouds. So you can add that from to get more. So you get more visuals, and it just brings up for you to add more visuals. So you can look for visualizations for text data, and you can process text data. So you remember when I was splitting by delimiter? Hi guys, can you remember when I was splitting by delimiter? So okay, now look at it, word cloud. So you can create a visual that has frequent text in your data. So I just added that. So we're at DAO. So it gets added in here. Okay. So here it is. So if I add, so let me look for a row that has lots of text. Okay. This row doesn't even really have text. Okay, so let me go to my data view and just look for one quickly. Okay, product description is supposed to have lots of text. Okay, so let me go out. Okay, so on that product, our product description. So can we see? You can see that the words that are most occurrent are bigger. Can you see? So there are different ways you can use this for text categorization and a whole lot of other stuff. So we'll be seeing. So now you have brought a new assignment that we'll work on together in our fourth, yeah, now final week. We'll work on this together, text analysis with Power BI. So this will be. So do we understand that? So this is just one
Yes.
example out of many of processing text data. So I hope there is no other question. No, I'm actually still waiting for my question that I was expecting us to observe. Okay, so since we did not observe it, I talked about web scraping at the beginning of the class.
Okay.
So that now will be the assignment. And in the next class, each person in class for the first 5 minutes will present their screens and show us how to scrape data from the web. I taught it in the first class, but we'll go over it again. So go over the videos, and in the next class, that's the first thing we'll do for recap. So I would, in the first class, immediately it's time for class by 4, I would drop a link to about 2 sites and ask us to go scrape data from there. So guys, do you understand? I hope we had fun and we learned a lot today. Okay, thank you.
It's interestingly large. Thanks a lot.
Okay, have a good day.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Thank you, Maro.
thank you.
So we've come to the end of the
No
class.
problem.
It's already 5:59. So we will be turning off the recording now. And in the next 5 minutes, the meeting will end. Thank you for being present today.
Thank you too. We are grateful.